Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Acupuncture is My Life. Now, of course, in this episode, we'll continue with discussing the basic functions of the internal organs as seen by an acupuncturist. Because, again, as a reminder, an acupuncturist views the functions of the internal organs different from that of a Western trained physician. Okay. A lot of our theory, that being an acupuncturist, is based on the balance of yin and yang. Because when yin and yang is out of balance, disorders or disease usually present. And this is why I say, if you need to listen to these episodes more than once, feel free to do so. But once it all comes together, when I begin to go in depth with regard to diseases and how they're diagnosed and how they're treated, you'll be surprised. Now, in today's episode, I plan to talk about the functions of the stomach. But I'll remind you, before discussing the functions of the stomach, I need you to momentarily attempt to block your understanding of the Western concept of the internal organs completely. Okay, now that you've done so, you see, when it comes to the stomach, it's almost impossible to discuss its functions without including the spleen as well. Why? Because I've said this before, even in the discussions of the functions of the spleen as well as the stomach are responsible for postnatal or post-heaven chi. So all energies, all chi within the body comes from the chi that's created by the spleen and stomach. So this is why after birth, because the kidneys are responsible for your pre-heaven chi while you're still in the womb, but once you come out, all chi that's created to circulate throughout the body starts from what's produced by the spleen and stomach. So they're almost two inseparable organs that reside in your middle jowl, the middle section of your body. Some could say the core and so forth. But because both the spleen and stomach are responsible for an individual's post-heaven chi, it's almost hard to speak of one without having to reference the other. But when it comes to the stomach to an acupuncturist is responsible for controlling the rotting and ripening of food, as well as the transportation of food essences. Super important. The stomach also controls the descending of chi and also serves as the origin of fluids. Now, in terms of rotting and ripening, along with receiving food and drink, ingesting food and drink, the stomach then transforms this food by way of fermentation. This function is in preparation for the spleen, here we go again, to begin the process of separation and extraction of refined essence from foods in which you eat or ingest. After the transformation process is completed, stomach chi passes foods ingested along to the small intestine to continue the process of separation and begin its function of absorption. Now, after transformation by the stomach is complete, the stomach begins to transport food essences along with the spleen throughout the body, which pretty much supports why the functions of the spleen and stomach are inseparable. Now, when it comes to controlling and descending of chi, As I stated earlier, once the transformation process is completed, stomach chi sends the food downward to the small intestine, and as I stated in my discussion on the functions of the spleen then sends the essence extracted from the foods by the stomach up to the lungs and heart. Because again, the chi of the spleen goes up, chi of the stomach goes down. So the continued processing of foods is sent down to the small intestine by the chi of the stomach. But the essence extracted from the foods is sent up by the chi from the spleen to the lungs and heart. So, if you want a brief refresher, go back to my discussion on the functions of the spleen so you can understand how inseparable these two organs are. Now, as far as the stomach serving as the origin of fluids, which generally tend to be derived from the food and drink that is received by the stomach to an acupuncturist has a responsibility of ensuring that some of the food and drink which is not used to be extracted as essence are condensed in the form of body fluids, which is why the stomach is considered the origin of body fluids to an acupuncturist. Again, I'll remind you, in getting into patterns now, certain types of disorders relative to the stomach, I'll remind you, the stomach with the spleen is the root of all post-heaven chi, which means it's the source of all chi which is produced by the body after birth. Please remember this when I start getting into Western diagnosed diseases, disorders. All right? Because the stomach and spleen, which are the root, again, of post-heaven chi, are so fundamental to our health that when you look at stomach chi, you can sort of relate it to life, to existence, to why you exist. And a lack of stomach chi, you can tie to death. But don't take this literally. It simply means, and all I'm saying is that as long as there is stomach chi, every disease can be treated or dealt with. Now, if stomach chi, or when stomach chi is weak, disease tends to be more difficult to treat. So stomach chi is an essential factor with regard to its strength. It's an essential factor in prognosis. Now, I get patients, long-standing chronic illnesses, autoimmune disorders, where the stomach chi is weak and it's tough to treat. It takes longer. And even accompany that with stomach yin deficiency, because when there's stomach chi or stomach yin deficiency, spleen and stomach cannot properly process foods to create the chi that's necessary for the body. Now remember, I just stated the stomach is the origin of fluids. So things that you drink have to be transformed and digested by the stomach. And as I quickly referenced stomach yin deficiency, the stomach can be affected by yin deficiency, and indeed, stomach yin deficiency is usually serves as the beginning of a yin deficiency pathology that eventually affects other organs. So I hope you're beginning to understand that when there's problems, and I'll try and leave the spleen out of this discussion as much as possible. When there's problems with the stomach, there will eventually be problems with other internal organs. Okay, that's why it's important to seek regular wellness visits with your acupuncturist. It is super important because one of their main focuses, and even in speaking for myself, I love doing abdominal acupuncture because whenever anyone comes into the Acupuncture is My Life clinic in New York City with a disease or disorder, I automatically know the stomach as well as the spleen has been affected. And no matter what the disorder is, it can be pain, all the way to chronic or autoimmune disorder, or someone affected by an exterior pathogenic factor such as a cold or some type of virus or bacterial infection. Stomach. Even when I directly treat whatever the problem is, disorder is, or disease, there's always some type of focus on the stomach. And these are things that I discuss on the Acupuncture is My Life YouTube channel. So if you really want to learn more about the functions of the stomach, and as well as certain types of diseases tied to deficiency patterns or full patterns of the stomach, check out the Acupuncture is My Life YouTube channel. So much you'll learn there. Now, what can cause dysfunction? Of course, number one, diet. The main cause of disease for the stomach is diet. And you could look at this from many different aspects. You know, it can have much to do with the nature of and types of foods in which you eat, the times in which you eat, and under what conditions you are eating this food under. And also, I will say this, and I really didn't emphasize it too much when I discussed the functions of the spleen, and this is why a lot of times I say check out the YouTube channel under Acupuncture is My Life, because it goes really into detail. But the stomach prefers moist foods that are not dry, and the spleen prefers dry foods. So you get that yin and yang picture yet? Start thinking in terms of yin and yang. Now, when you think of it in terms of yin and yang, right, the moist aspect is yin, which is what the stomach prefers. Okay? And the dry aspect is yang, which is what the spleen prefers. Dry foods. You see, like eating porridge and soup. These are examples of the types of foods which are moist that the stomach prefers. Like when you're talking about bread or baked goods, which are dry, the spleen loves that. Okay, so if a person eats too much in the way of dry foods, such as baked goods, things that are broiled, the stomach can become dry and eventually suffer from stomach yin deficiency, which creates problems. And this is why I speak of, again, in this episode, as well as others, it's about balance. Not too much dry foods, not too much moist foods. It's about balance. Which aspect of an internal organ represents yin and which aspect represents yang? Now, the stomach can suffer from overeating or excessive consumptions of foods that can either be too hot or even too cold. Now we're talking about the energy of the foods. Like if you eat too much in the way of hot foods, it can create stomach heat in the stomach. Okay, keep these things in mind. Now, regularity of time or meal time. It's important to eat at regular times. And this is how nature has designed the rhythmic flow of chi throughout the body. And chi flows through different organs at different times. So if you eat when your stomach chi is inactive or inoperative, then the stomach will not properly digest the food. That's why, I know it sounds old school, but that's why it's extremely important to eat at regular times. And our grandparents used to tell us this, because they were more aligned with nature than the youth today. So when you eat at irregular times, stomach disorders usually follow. Now, other things that can play into causing the cause of stomach patterns or stomach problems is emotional strain. Now, the stomach, like the spleen, because they're inseparable, the stomach is yang and the spleen is yin. Again, it's about that balance between yin and yang. And each organ has a paired organ. Like, for instance, the paired organ to the small intestine is the heart. The paired organ to the kidney is the bladder. The paired organ to the liver is the gallbladder. And if you just take a second to even think about the relationship as paired organs, and in the future I'll get deep into that, it makes sense. And one is usually yang in nature, and one is usually yin. The yin organ provides the nourishment for the yang organ to function, and the yang organ provides the energy for the yin organ to function. Keep that in the back of your head. Keep that in the back of your head. But another cause for problems of the stomach is emotional strain, because again, just like I stated in the spleen episode, and again, you can go to the Acupuncture Smile Life YouTube channel to get an in-depth understanding of all of this. The stomach is usually affected by worry and excessive thinking, because worry stagnates chi in the stomach. And that's when you worry too much, you'll get like burning pain or belching or a sense of nausea. And then it can be excessive mental work, or we can call this pensiveness, where over a period of time, meaning like many years, this tends to lead to stomach chi deficiency. Now also, anger also affects the stomach. You see, anger can affect the stomach either directly or indirectly. You see, anger, frustration, resentment also causes chi stagnation, but not necessarily or directly with the stomach first. It'll start with the liver, and then it'll begin to affect the stomach, and there'll be nausea, belching, and distended pain as well. Now, exterior pathogenic factors such as heat, dampness, cold, when the climate is representing the state of the climate at that particular time, can affect the stomach, but more so cold, because cold tends to bypass the exterior layers of the body and affects the stomach directly in the form of interior cold, where you'll start to feel sudden acute pain and even vomiting. Okay. Dampness can affect the stomach as well. And so can heat, but cold as an exterior pathogenic factor affects the stomach the most. Now, some of the basic patterns, like empty patterns, as I briefed on earlier, is like stomach chi deficiency. I'll jump back into that. Symptoms of that would be like an uncomfortable feeling in the epigastrium. There won't be any appetite. There will be a lack of taste sensation with loose stools, tiredness, especially in the morning with weak limbs. Now keep in mind, as you try and remember what I just stated with regard, not just stated, but stated earlier with regard to stomach chi deficiency. As an acupuncturist, I see this a lot, especially in patients that come in with chronic fatigue or chronic tiredness. Because the stomach and spleen is responsible for the creation, the production of all chi that travels throughout the body. And when stomach chi is deficient or someone presents with chronic tiredness, the first thing that comes to mind before I start assessing that meridian or that channel is stomach chi deficiency. What can cause stomach chi deficiency? Diet, lacking the proper nourishment, protein, or either under eating. Keep in mind, you'll get some people that really go overboard with their diet, and they'll nibble on a few vegetables and maybe one fruit and drink water throughout the day. That's not enough. Precursor to stomach chi deficiency. And when stomach chi is deficient, again, loose stools and tiredness. Two main symptoms. Chronic illness can cause stomach chi deficiency too, because it can arise as a consequence which weakens, or it can serve as a consequence to weaken chi in general. And let's look at, let's say, chronic illness as diabetes, high blood pressure. But then even a prolonged illness such as mononucleosis can cause stomach chi deficiency. And you want to, I'll say it again. You have to see a local acupuncturist or contact acupuncturist, my life. Because it's all about health. That's what it's all about. Because when stomach chi is deficient, spleen chi becomes deficient as well, which results in, like I said, a lack of appetite, loose stools, lack of taste in his mouth, because when stomach chi is weak, it cannot transport food essences to the limbs, resulting in the feeling of weakness of the limbs. So an acupuncturist, of course, would tonify stomach chi in that case. Then you can have another deficiency or empty pattern, is stomach yin deficiency. You have problems when you get to this level. You wouldn't have an appetite, or there will be slight hunger, but you won't feel like eating. There'll be constipation, dry stools, a subtle burning sensation in the epigastric area, dry mouth, dry throat, especially in the afternoon. Now, there'll be some thirst, but you'll just want to sip. And it'll be this like feeling of fullness right after eating. What can cause that? Diet, irregular diet, irregular eating habits, mostly due to eating late at night. So many people in the Western world do that. Stop eating after 7 if you can help it. Also, skipping meals or grabbing a quick bite during a short break at work or a short lunch hour, worrying about work while eating, going straight back to work right after you eat, or even eating while you're working, whether it's at your desk or in the truck or whatever. It's not good. Constitution can play a part. But when constitution plays a part, you'll notice stomach yin deficiency younger people, teenagers, and children. Fevers can cause stomach yin deficiency during the course of an infectious disease, such as what's happening now. But it usually doesn't last that long, because once the body heals itself, which again is why I say see your local acupuncturist or contact Acupuncture My Life, because that's what acupuncture is about: strengthening the body, balancing yin and yang so that the body can self-regulate and do what it's designed to do, heal itself. Now, another cause of stomach yin deficiency can be due to antibiotics, because antibiotics usually injure stomach chi and stomach yin. So you really don't want to stay on that for a long period of time. And once you're off, and if you've seen an acupuncturist, the body will go back to normal in a short period of time. An acupuncturist would look to nourish stomach yin, nourish the fluids of the body, and so forth. And those are two examples of empty patterns. Like a full pattern could be stomach chi stagnation. Many individuals in the Western world especially experience this, where there's epigastric pain and distension. There'll be belching, nausea, vomiting, possibly vomiting, hiccups, irritability. What can cause that? One, the main one, there's two main causes. One is diet, eating in a hurry. Again, working while you're eating in a state of tension while you're upset, eating standing up. These habits tend to lead to stomach chi stagnation. The second is emotional strain, where there's anger and frustration and resentment. This can affect the stomach and cause stomach chi to stagnate. So it can be a combination of dietary irregularity along with emotional strain causes stomach chi to stagnate. But if there's emotional strain by itself, it can cause liver chi stagnation, and eventually the liver can overact on the stomach. And when I get into Western disorders, I'll get into how one internal organ can overact on another, leading to problems. Another full pattern, I'll even do one more full pattern. That can be like cold invading the stomach. Like I said, it's an exterior pathogen. The stomach doesn't like cold. It can be severe pain in the epigastrium, a feeling of cold limbs. You prefer to be warm. You vomit clear fluids, nausea, and feeling worse after swallowing cold drinks. And your preference would be for warm liquids. And this can, the cause of this can be due either to exposure to cold or excessive consumption of cold foods and ice drinks. So be careful of the diet. Diet is super important. Some people get into like, I eat carrots and celery all day and this and that, and I want to be super healthy, but the temperature of your foods is extremely important. In this case, in acupuncture, so I would look to expel the cold, warm a person's stomach, and stimulate the descending function or the descending of stomach chi. Super important. Guys, you have to keep in mind, diet is very important, but it's not just diet. Your mental state plays a part, how much rest you get, the time in which you eat, the types of foods, food energies. You have to eat in accordance to the laws of nature. Those laws are there for a reason. Chi flows through the body at certain times of the day, certain hours, and it's important to either eat, not eat, drink, or not drink during those times, and I'll get into that. I'll get into how you can get a feeling of what's wrong during the hours in which you're awake. And this is why I say you have to make acupuncture a part of your life. Because acupuncture is my life. What's yours?